The news coming out of Libya and Egypt and elsewhere in the Middle East and North Africa this week has understandably pushed almost everything else out of the headlines. But even with all that is going on abroad, we are still in the home stretch of the presidential campaign, and there is a lot going on. The Obama campaign this week quietly released its 5th ad focused on women's health and reproductive choice, ad number 5. And it's not just an ad that they put up on the web somewhere. This is an ad that is airing on TV in the swing states. This new ad argues, like the previous ones did, that both Mr. Romney and his running mate, Paul Ryan, say they would overturn Roe versus Wade, and both have supported banning abortion even without exceptions for women who get pregnant because of rape or incest. The ad is airing in 5 states, all of which are swing states that the president and the Romney campaign are fighting hard to win. It's airing in Colorado, Ohio, Iowa, Nevada, in Virginia. The Obama campaign is essentially showing with all these ads how seriously they are taking the women's vote in this election and how they are appealing for the women's vote by talking policy. But hey, the Romney campaign is serious about the women's vote too. And here's how you can tell. I want you to look at the crowd staged behind Mitt Romney at a rally yesterday in Fairfax, Virginia. What do almost all of the people standing behind Mitt Romney at this rally have in common? If you said matched chromosomes, ding, ding, ding. It seems like there are maybe a couple of Y chromosomes in the back row, maybe, but right next to Romney, it is lady time all the time. When I saw this yesterday, I was watching this with the sound off, and I thought he was speaking at some sort of women-only event. And I thought, how many women-only events are there in the world, and why would they invite a presidential candidate? But he wasn't speaking at a woman-only event. They just moved all the women at the event so that they were standing right next to him and behind him. Well, judging by the latest polling out of Virginia, it looks like the Obama campaign's strategy of highlighting Mr. Romney and Mr. Ryan's records on women's health may be trumping the Romney campaign strategy of just standing the candidate up next to a lot of women. President Obama is beating Mitt Romney among Virginia women by 14 points right now. And it was in this political environment that something happened in the state of Virginia today that is not necessarily being billed as relevant to the presidential race, but boy, howdy, is it relevant to the presidential race. Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, who spent a lifetime as an anti-abortion activist, and his Attorney General, Ken Cuccinelli, who also spent a lifetime as an anti-abortion activist. These two aggressively have engineered a meeting of the state's health board that happened today. They aggressively engineered that meeting toward a decision that could have the effect of shutting down most of the abortion clinics in Virginia. Last year, Bob McDonnell signed a new law calling for special regulations just for abortion clinics, targeted regulations designed to make it economically impossible to operate an abortion clinic in the state of Virginia. It's the same thing that the Republicans did in Mississippi this year. These are called TRAP laws, targeted regulations. These are regulations that do not apply to any other form of medical facility at all. The law would not apply for dental surgeons or for outpatient plastic surgery clinics. It's just for abortion clinics, and it is very obviously designed to shut them down. And it is expected to shut down a majority of abortion clinics in the state. Informed estimates are that it could shut down at least 15 of Virginia's 20 clinics. But when it came time to implement these new special abortion clinic only red tape plans in Virginia, the state's health board voted that they would exempt existing clinics from the most onerous new regulations, from the regulations that were designed to force most of these clinics to close. So these targeted regulations would only be likely to prevent new abortion clinics from opening in the state. They would not necessarily shut down the clinics that were already operating there. That, it turned out, was not enough for Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli. They refused to accept the new rules from the health department. They refused to certify them unless the Board of Health changed its ruling to get rid of the grandfathering in, to make all of the new red tape apply to all of the existing clinics in Virginia. Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli leaned on the Board of Health to go back and overturn their previous ruling, and today the Board of Health did what they wanted.
Motion passed.
Pro-choice supporters.
After Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli told the Board of Health in the state how to vote, told them essentially that they were not allowed to exempt existing clinics from these new regulations that are designed to shut them down, the Virginia Board of Health voted to go along with the governor today. They voted to impose those targeted new regulations on all of Virginia's 20 abortion clinics. That is the vote Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli told them to make, and that vote is seen as likely to shut down most of the state's clinics. This is not being sold really as a national political issue, but in a really important swing state, this is Republican governance at work. And it's not exactly a triumph of small c conservatism, right? I mean, this is really big government, purposely using mountains of red tape in a targeted way to shut down specific private businesses in order to get the government's chosen outcome in a medical decision that you are supposed to be able to make yourself in conjunction with your doctor. But now the government is going to make that decision for you. Virginia women, right now, you have 20 options in the state if you ever need to terminate a pregnancy. Nobody can guarantee you are going to have any options in the state once these new regulations are enforced. This is how Republican governance is being modeled in the swing state of Virginia. The women of Virginia and the men of Virginia are being shown what Republicans will do if you vote them into office. So the implicit question here is, hey, Virginia, do you like what Ken Cuccinelli and Governor Ultrasound have done to your state and to your rights? How about those forced ultrasounds? How are those going for you? Is the government closing clinics and making medical decisions for you your kind of thing? Do you want that for the whole country? You want the federal government to be like that too? Because that can be arranged. Joining us now is Virginia House Delegate Charneil Herring. She's the Democratic Minority Whip. She's the chair of the legislature's Reproductive Health Caucus. Delegate Herring, it's good to have you with us here tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan are trying to win over female voters in Virginia. Yesterday, we saw Mr. Romney campaigning against a backdrop of all women in Fairfax.
Right.
Paul Ryan was in Virginia today. How do you think what's happening in Virginia in terms of women's health at the state level, how do you think that's going to play into the presidential race there, if at all?
I think it's going to play heavily, Rachel. I mean, Virginia women are seeing time and time again Republicans cling to an extreme right and bully an independent agency like they did today, the Board of Health, where these are independent people who have medical degrees and who understand what is necessary to deliver services to individuals in a safe manner. And what they saw was the Attorney General Cuccinelli bully them by sending them a letter saying, you know what, if you don't vote the way that I want you to vote, I may not represent you. You may have to incur legal fees. So this is going to affect the presidential race because I'm hearing from women from both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, saying the Republican Party has gone too far. I cannot vote for Mitt Romney. I cannot vote for Paul Ryan. We have a Senate race. I cannot vote for George Allen because he too clings to these extreme social agendas that are over to the right.
The reproductive health issue came to national in Virginia came to national prominence around Governor Bob McDonnell signing the law forcing women to have medically unnecessary ultrasounds, even if it was against their doctor's orders, forcing women to pay for that privilege.
Right.
When you are hearing people talk about presidential politics in the state of Virginia, is it widely known that the vice presidential nominee in the Republican ticket, Paul Ryan, proposed a forced ultrasound bill just like Virginia's for the whole country? Is that connection being made by people in the state?
It is. I think voters are starting to focus, and the Republicans keep just delivering gifts to us Democrats because they keep going to this extreme agenda, and people are digging a little bit further. They know that Paul Ryan has had a history of extreme agenda that's against women's reproductive health care, and basically he does not trust a woman to make her own decision about what she needs to do for her body and her health.
In terms of what's going to happen on the ground in Virginia, what do you see as the outcome here? We've talked to people who are observers of how trap laws work and are designed to work. In Mississippi, we saw the regulations targeted in which the people sponsoring that legislation openly admitted they were trying to ban abortion in Mississippi by shutting down all the clinics. Is it clear that that's what they are trying to do in Virginia? And do you think that's going to be the effect of these laws?
Absolutely. I think it's very clear that that's what they're trying to do. Again, when the Board of Health said we're going to grandfather in clinics, and then the Attorney General says, well, I'm not going to accept that. You go back and you do what I want you to do. I think it's very clear that they're trying to close clinics. And, the Attorney General Cuccinelli, he's running for governor next year, and he is using this as his platform. And, it's one thing to use a bully pulpit. It's another thing to be a bully. And that's exactly what happened.
Were there protests today, when there were protests today after this Board of Health ruling, were they reminiscent of the same kind of protests that we saw after the during the debate over the forced ultrasound thing? Or are there more people being drawn into this debate now than maybe even were paying attention before?
I think more people are being drawn into the debate, and they're, down in Richmond, there was protests, and unfortunately, let me tell you, and the American public needs to know, the public comment period was cut down to 1 hour. Last time it was 2 hours. Only a limited number of people were allowed to be in the hearing room. So they actually had to have a hearing. Advocates and people who are just concerned that it may not be pro-choice advocates, but they're concerned about the overreach of government that's happening in Virginia. They had their own hearing outside in a public comment period outside of the hearing room in a parking lot, is my understanding is what happened. Wow. So, and we're seeing a broad reaction in Virginia on the social media and just outrage about what happened, because we're seeing Republicans with their heavy-handed government reaching into the private lives of women without any exception, not any exception for rape or incest. They're just an out-and-out blanket. We're going to close down clinics. And Rachel, what's important that people must know that these clinics provide health care. They provide preventative service, cancer screenings. That's things that keep us women alive and keep our bodies healthy so that we can care for our families.
Virginia House Delegate Charnel Herring, thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to obviously be staying on this story. We've been on it for a long time now, it seems, but I hope that you'll come back and talk to us again as this story unfolds.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
All right.